So this time we're going to be taking a look at an OVA series of only 6 episodes, and that just happens to be Gunbuster. Not to be confused with the arcade game that was made by Taito, and it also happens to be a mecha science fiction show. Also, it's worth noting that this is actually one of Gainax's very early works. You know, the same company that put out ones like Nadia, the Blue Water, and Evangelion, which I have taken a look at last year. So anyways, let's begin and start talking about the story. So it begins in the year 2023, and it centers around the main character, Noriko. And she happens to be the daughter of a famous admiral who went up into space but never came back. So Noriko's dream is that she always wanted to go up into space, but she believes that she has no talent whatsoever. But she decides to join in a military school that can train people to go into space. And it seems like that this school is all females, and most of the training that happens there is all done in mech suits. So one day, Noriko ends up meeting someone that she really looks up to, and that happens to be Kazumi, for her being very talented. So it turns out that at this school, only 2 people get selected to go into space, so that they can defend humanity and fight off the space monsters. So Noriko is always asking Ota, who happens to be known as Coach, to do some hardcore training, so not only that she can be with her idol, but also at the same time she can avenge her father. So after a training montage, they happen to be selected. And of course, everyone is shocked about Noriko being selected because they all think that she's only got selected because of her relations to her father. So another student, who just happens to have a bitch face, ends up getting jealous and wants to fight her. And at first, Noriko is getting her ass kicked, but then after she turns off her monitor, she ends up doing the thunder kick, which takes forever to learn. So that really puts a surprise on everyone else. And come to think of it, this first episode kinda reminds me of the basic idea of a Rocky film. So after that, they eventually go into outer space, and this is pretty much where all the missions happen and whatnot. And they also happen to meet a Soviet pilot named Jung. And she's one of those characters who just happens to be a friendly rival. So from here on out, they just do a bunch of missions, and there's a lot of hardships that go on. It's kinda hard to explain it without giving away too much detail, but basically all I want to say here is that pretty much after a bunch of missions, they eventually go back to Earth, and as you know, in a lot of space films, the times that you spend in space go way slower than it does on Earth, so when they return, a lot of things are different now. Basically, it's the effects of time dilation. And that's one of the big things about this show, it's mostly about time. So anyways, I think that will be all I have to say about the story. And I'll get into more details about it near the end, so anyways, now we'll start moving on and talk about the animation. And I have to say, the animation here is pretty fucking top notch. Everything looks really good, everything is all bright and colorful, and of course the overall character designs and the mech designs are also really good looking as well. Although my only complaint with the designs is that the designs of the space monsters are just not as good as I was hoping they would have been. Considering you don't see any of the monsters for a while, you'd be thinking like, oh man, I wonder what they're going to look like, but then you realize that they just look like plain old blobs. Well, one of them kind of looks like a giant crab monster, which is kind of cool I guess, but you know, you only see it once and that's it. But other than that one thing, everything else looks really good. But one thing that is kind of weird is that in the final episode of this show, everything is black and white until the very end. I'm not entirely sure why they did it this way, but I guess it is a pretty cool charm to have to make it look old school. Now I don't really consider that to be a flaw per se, but it's just kinda weird since I was totally not expecting that, but either way, it is kind of a neat idea. But one last thing I gotta say with the animation before I move on is that I've noticed some pretty cool cameos within this one. So the first one I've noticed is that you see 2 posters on the wall of Ghibli Studio films, and they happen to be My Neighbor Totoro and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. And the last one that appeared in the same episode is that you actually see posters of Van Halen in it, which is actually pretty awesome. But anyways, overall, the animation in the show is pretty fucking great. And as for the music, it's also really good, so not only do you get some pretty nice sounding tunes, but it also suits the show very well, and well, I just really don't have any complaints about it whatsoever. But the opening theme song is really catchy, and it does play within one of the episodes, which is also pretty awesome. So yes, the music in this one is really good. And now, as for the voice acting in this one, well, it's only in Japanese, so, you know, I can't really tell a whole lot about it there. But one thing I do wonder was a coincidence is that Noriko is being voiced by someone that is also named Noriko. So unfortunately, I can't really say a whole lot about the quality here, but apparently there was supposed to be an English dub of this one, like way back in the day, but apparently there was some like tracks lost within the development, so it just had to be cancelled. It would have been interesting to see who would play who, but oh well. But as far as I can tell, the voice acting is pretty fine. And now, as for the overall score, well, I know I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, especially if you've seen my older reviews, but yes, I'm going to give this one a 10 out of 10. So yes, obviously, just because it gives something a 10 out of 10 doesn't mean that it's like the best of everything and that like there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I mean, did you even hear my one complaint about the monster design being kind of bland? But in case you didn't know this about me, whether if I give something a 9 or a 10, it's not really a huge difference between qualities, considering that both animes that would be fit into either a 9 or a 10 would still be up there as some of my all-time favorites. But yes, this one is also considered to be a big favorite of mine. So yes, the concept is pretty simple, but I just really love the writing of it, I love the characters, I think they're all really well developed and very likable, and the tragic moments are also done very well, making them very touching. And there's also a good amount of action going on too. And as I already said, the animation and the music is also really awesome as well. So personally, not only is this one of my top favorite animes, but it's also one of my top favorite mecha shows. And I also find it to be a pretty important anime that Gainax have made. Because if it wasn't for this show, then Evangelion also wouldn't be a thing either. But for those of you who have seen my review feature from last year, then yeah, it's pretty obvious that I like this one way more. But that's just my personal opinion, but I can still definitely recommend it in case you haven't seen it. And of course, if you're a fan of the mecha genre, then yes, this is indeed worth a watch. And besides, it's only like 6 episodes, it's not going to take you that long to finish. So yes, personally, I really love this one. Even watching it for the second time, it's still just as good as it was for the first time.